Welcome to the world of lean startup. The lean startup was a term coined by Ries. Often we see an entrepreneurs failing, though they start with a promising idea, a great passion, good fundings, but by the time they develop their assumptions into products, the market is not ready to accept their product. To overcome this failure, the proposition of the lean startup came. The lean startup is based on the philosophy of build, measure and learn. While build, you develop your MVP, which is the minimal viable product. These are based on 2-3 assumptions which are going to be promising in future. After developing into the product, you put it into the market to measure the initial reactions. The initial reactions are measured from the early adopters. These reactions give you a sort of benchmark on how the product is going to behave into the market. Finally, after measuring these reactions, you learn. In case of learning, there are two principles known as persevere and pivot. If your assumptions are correct and it is giving you returns, then you fine tune your assumptions and persevere the product, or you completely pivot it by changing the target market or changing the product itself. By following these three principles, it is guaranteed that the startups will get a better success.
So I am here to discuss why startups fail. Startups either follow two strategies. They are following a traditional strategy or a product-oriented strategy. In traditional strategy, they focus more on businesses, strategies and the objectives. So it's a chain of pipeline which they thoroughly focus on and concentrate to achieve success. And in the product-oriented strategy, what they do is they do not consider about the customers. They focus on the product, that they forget the customers and they believe that the customers will accept whatever product they build up. So an ideal strategy is to balance between the traditional and the product-oriented strategy and come up with a balanced strategy called as the lean startup strategy. The lean startup strategy was brought from TPS, the Toyota Production System. The TPS was for companies, which is now applied as a lean strategy for startups. So what is the lean startup strategy? It's basically a framework of build, measure and learn. But the strategy starts from you have to learn about your customers, learn what they need, then you should identify with measuring metrics, what all the factors you can measure the customer successes or the product successes, and then build upon your product with the customer metrics, with what you have learned and all the measuring factors. And then you can reverse the strategy and come back with build, measure and learn. So the reason why we are going for a build, measure, learn strategy is that you have to reiterate your loop as fast as possible to build your product as quick as possible. So in a normal startup cycle, it's like you have assumptions about the product and assumptions about the customer, and if one assumption fails, your whole strategy fails. But in the build, measure, learn strategy, it's possible to proceed without any assumptions and biases. So the lean startup methodology is a new way of converting ideas into startups without having any notion of biases, assumptions and other factors.
The book The Lean Startup has been a fascinating read for me. Ries has actually defined entrepreneurship, startup in a different manner. It's not just the people who are outside who are starting with a big idea who need to be called entrepreneurs. There are established people who are known by the name entrepreneurs who are inside the organization who still have to innovate and get a way to get their ideas into the market. So what does he suggest? He says there are people who have no problem with the resources or with the team or with the talent, but there's a failure that is often seen because of a lack of a coherent process. So he goes about trying to understand or develop a scientific approach to decision making which can help in building a sustainable company. So what does Eric has to offer to people who have ideas? When you're starting out with ideas using the just do it approach, believing in chaos, that either a technical excellence or an investment in marketing will lead you to the ultimate success. What we are failing to understand is the fact learning is often given as an excuse or after the fact rationalization. But if you have to go by what Eric says, there are three different phases. namely vision, steer, and accelerate. Now, what is he talking about vision? You already have a big idea or the destination where you want to reach. The next thing is there are certain assumptions which you've seen from the industry or from a prior experience with which you feel this is how it needs to be. Now once you have that, rather than just immediately starting to build upon it, it's important to validate those assumptions. There he uses a term called validated learning, whereby he says every idea that a person comes up with is actually an experiment. You get that experiment onto the field, get out of the building and start seeing if that's exactly what the customers want. It could be as simple as what Zappos did by saying whether people are interested to buy shoes online. So what he did was just to experiment by taking a picture of an inventory of shoes and then sharing it on his blog and see what is the reaction by the customer. Is the customer actually willing to go and buy a shoe online? And what are the payment mechanisms? You try to test the entire set of assumptions. Even if one of the assumptions fail, then your strategic direction is lacking. Then you need to pivot to a different strategy and again go about learning or validating that. Now with respect to these assumptions, he uses a term called leap of faith. There are two basic hypotheses that you start with. One, which is a value-driven hypothesis, is what you are planning or having in mind valuable to the actual customer. Next is the growth hypothesis. Will it be able for you to attract new set of customers online? Now, one example that he cites is the use of Facebook, where he says many of them doubted whether Facebook is actually worth the kind of investments that it is actually getting when it initially started, one that started in the dorm room. But Facebook has clearly managed to answer both these hypotheses well. One with respect to value, the amount of time that people were spending. You had the same set of customers actually coming back to the site and really spending more than 50% of their time on a daily basis. Next, the growth hypothesis, within a few months or few weeks, they were able to really attract or penetrate into a lot of college networks or campuses. And that's exactly why he feels that getting these learnings validated is a precursor to making sure that you have optimal resources invested and it will also give you whether you are in the right direction or not. Next, one important thing that I want to say is the fact that you can also look at other industries to validate your assumptions. For example, in the case of iPod, now taking a look at whether seeing if people are ready to listen to music by having something which is going to be they're going to wear on the streets. Well, you could have taken the case of Walkman and said that okay, these are assumptions which we can safely assume. One point that he keeps on reiterating throughout the book is the fact that you need a long, stable operating history for your stable or structured business plans to work. In case of startup, that's not the case. There's a lot of uncertainty that is there which we need to handle, and therefore going about these deep, structured or analysis is not going to actually work out. What we actually need to learn is from interactions with real customers. And I would just like to end this by saying Lean Startup is something that has given me a different idea. In the sense, I'm going to end up as a senior business analyst in Cognizant, but immediately if I look at what can be done, there are interesting areas like this thought of validated learning is something that I can put to use, say for example in cab management system for employees, seat management system, managing the project status, or identifying certain difficulties which will happen. I feel this has been one of the good books for me to come across.